I'm Vin.
I'm Sori.
And this is Thrice-Lullaby.
Lullaby.
From, is this AO again?
Of course it's AO.
AO Tasco. No, this is a different AO.
Yeah.
Sorry, not AO Tasco. AO Tasco.
That's Asco Tosco or something like that.
Yeah, that's the guy that said that I'm the most compelling and frustrating human being on the internet. If you'd like to know why, dear listener, all you have to do is go to Middle America with Vin and Sori, and you can check out why your boy Vincent is so frustrating to so many people. Now, there are multiple ways to get your song reviewed, dear listener. My favorite way is the community option. $1 at the gate gets you in at Patreon, where you get to meet the amazing Helen Dross, the amazing Sarcast, all the amazing individuals that make our village our village. You get to pull your points together. There's all these different tiers. There's a t-shirt tier. There's a tier where you'll be able to hear the first song from our band. And no, it's not going to be the Village People. We actually have a pretty cool name for our band. There's another Weak Sauce band that had our name, but they put the in front of it, and so we just took the out of it. So, yeah, that song is coming together really, really nicely. It should be coming together pretty soon. We're also going to be shooting a music video. We're going to have to figure out a way to splice everything, because our band is literally international. Thank you very freaking much. So you get all that, $1 at the Patreon, you pull your points together, that determines what songs we review. If you're a filthy capitalist like AO and Sori, and you don't want to work with a team of people, you want to go straight to the head of the line like at Disney World, there's a fast pass option, $125 at the gate, gets you in up ahead of everyone else on the schedule. And that's what the big homie did. You do that 3 times, you get bumped down to the $75 rate.
The short list.
You get down to the $75 rate, lifetime subscription to the VIP pass on the website that's coming up soon. And without further ado, hold on, let me get my lyrics up here. This is Thrice-Lullaby. Let's go.
And
what are we all living for? If nothing's worth dying for tonight, your dreams are not enough. What I need is love that's worth laying down my
That's what died.
John. You're right.
He went after your
did.
boy John Lennon.
He did.
Talk to him, brother minister.
Oh my gosh.
I told y'all that song was whack as hell. This is one of the classic Vin and Sori moments where people went ballistic on us because I didn't like the Imagine song. Now
It was ballistic on you. I liked it.
yeah, I didn't. Yeah, it was a perfect setup for them because people don't like going after you. Now,
Well, some people do.
like I didn't like have any. This song like has some like animosity towards Imagine. I don't have any animosity towards Imagine. I just thought it was a simplistic song.
Well,
You know.
yeah, but he was basically saying, there was a part where he
He
said,
went after it,
right there, no right or wrong, can you imagine a world where there's no need to cry?
but no joy or passion.
Yeah. It seems the price is much too high.
Which reminded me of one of my favorite books in Parsippany, New Jersey. We saw the movie together. The movie was a horrible.
What was it?
It was a horrible. It was the one where like everything was black and white, and then you get released, and the Giver.
Oh, yeah.
But the movie was terrible.
Well,
Like
probably because you read the book. I thought it was
no,
good.
the book was way better. Like I've seen like Forrest Gump. I've read the book and the movie. The movie is completely different.
Oh.
Like they made Forrest an innocent character in the movie. In the book, he's not an innocent person.
Oh, really?
Oh no. He's not this like naive, almost
What is
messianic. He's kind of slow. I mean but he's not like he knows what women are. And he knows like I mean, he went to space and everything. I mean, it was just
Oh.
yeah. Actually, I think Forrest Gump was like the only book where I was like, okay, the movie was better than the book. Because like it was just ridiculous. He went to space, he did this, he did that, and he wasn't. And his mom was like, "Don't marry a Protestant." That was a big thing. You can't marry a Protestant. So anyway, but the book, the Giver, was so much better than the movie. So much better than the movie. I remember I was reading it in Parsippany, New Jersey. We were on school number 3 in the 8th grade. And no. Brooklawn was actually school number 2. Then went to the Bronx, that was school number 3, and then we went to Brooklyn, that was school number 4. Okay, so school number 2 was in Parsippany, New Jersey. And my uncle Jalal was a Nation of Islam guy. So I was reading the book because like we had to read the book for English lit read or whatever. So I'm reading The Giver, and he's like, "What's that, brother? What you reading there, brother?" The Nation of Islam guy. And I was like, "Well, it's this book." So he's like, "Well, explain the book to me, brother." And I was like, "Well," so I was saying like they're taking, there's no colors, there's no feeling, there's no emotion because they created a society where they could completely eliminate pain, and basically like you're supposed to judge that society and come to the conclusion. I understood what the book was trying to do. It's like you're supposed to come to the conclusion that the pain is worth it because of all the beauty that you sacrifice without it. He's like, "You're a genius, brother." He's like, he just like showered all this.
That's cute.
This the Black Power stuff, and he just like, "Keep reading those books, brother." It's just like that.
That's cute.
I was like, no doubt, brother minister, whatever. So that it seemed like the Giver there a little bit too, especially this verse right here. No right or wrong, can you imagine a world where there's no more need to cry, but no joy or passion?
Yeah.
There was a crazy line in the book where it wasn't a line. It was like, so the Giver was the one that had all the pain or whatever, because they couldn't like get rid of it.
Yeah.
So they had to like.
He knew all the bad things.
They
that
had to
happened
condense it into one person, and he would feel it and everything. And so the Giver, like he would elect, basically, it would be the next Giver, and the next Giver. So this kid, the protagonist of the show, of the book, was chosen to be the next Giver or whatever. And the guy would like touch him, and then he would start feeling what the Giver was feeling, and it was this crazy.
Yeah.
There's a crazy scene where it was a civil war. And he was
that part was in the movie.
He was a soldier dying on the field, and then the wild hogs were coming. Just horrible. And then so it was just a crazy book. But it was one of, you know, if I had to do it over again, somebody talked to me in the fireside. They were like, aside from the Bible, what's been the most impactful book in your life? And I said something about Marcus Garvey. But I think it was probably The Giver. Was probably the most impactful book aside from the Bible. I mean, there were messianic themes in the book. I mean, and there's a sense in which the giver is a messiah figure, right?
Absolutely.
Because he bears all the pain of the people and then allows them to live in a utopian existence. Although it's not a utopian existence, but anyway. But yeah, I think the giver was the most, because it really communicated the value of pain in the human experience, as far as the tension that we and that's one of the reasons why like Christian theology was so compelling to me, because it was a way to explain those tensions of why we still want to live in this world even though there's pain involved in it. And that's because there was an ideal world that we lost, and that, you know, there is an ideal world that we're going toward, and so the pain that happens in between is necessary to get from A to B. So that book actually is very interesting. Is that book helped formulate a lot of my Christian theology.
That's so interesting.
Yeah, because
That was in
I was
eighth
coming
grade, you
from
said?
yeah. So my own personal, you know, theology of suffering or whatever, that book was massively important to me. And it actually informed, which you're not supposed to do that when you read the Bible. You're supposed to just, you know, exegete, not eisegete, but...
Is that something I could read to the kids? Or is it too old for them?
No. You could read it. I mean, I was in 8th grade. You know,
yeah,
I did it in like 1 or 2 sittings. It was just very, very compelling book. And I remember thinking to myself, wow, this would be a badass movie. But they just completely wrecked it. I feel like the Hollywood whatever underestimate their audience, because there was a lot of like heady, there wasn't a lot of action in the book. A lot of it was just your mind. And I just think the Hollywood folks like, nah, we gotta add, like a couple of scenes were not in the book at all. Like, you try to make it all tense. It's like, that wasn't the point of the book. The point of it was not an action novel. It was really a sort of a, you know, the guy was creating his own doctrine of suffering and doing it through the book. And that's what it was about. It was about suffering. It was not about, you know, it was about how to reconcile it. You know? And
was there a love story involved in it? Because I know in the Hollywood.
well, yeah, there was a girl, there was a love interest type situation. I mean, I don't want to spoil the thing for everybody else, but there was a love interest situation in the book, for sure. So, but as far as the song goes, this song is, he went right at. This is the closest I could get to a battle rap in.
I can't believe nobody suggested this after your old John Lennon.
Somebody probably did. That video is so popular, it has so many views and so many comments. That video has like the most comments, like, period.
Really?
Oh yeah, it was great. It was great. I was actually like surprised, because I was like, you know, there were people that were saying, oh, you don't like it because it questions God and questions the world without God. I'm like, that's right. That's why I gave Behemoth a 10, like, in the last, you know, like, what are you talking about? Like, but of course, but at the same time, a lot of those guys didn't know who we were. Like, that was the first time they had heard. And I just think that was the first time anybody had dared to say anything about that song. It was just too simplistic for me.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not, you know, it's just, I don't, like, this guy's problem with the song isn't even my problem with the song. The song just was just too ABC for me. But, like, he's talking about right here, like, he says, the way that he flipped this thing around, I'll explain to you in a second. So, no heaven above us. Remember, he said,
got loud at this part.
He said, well, because remember when he was like, imagine there's no heaven.
Yeah.
And so then he goes, yeah, a mile after mile of empty sky. Like, that's not a good.
Yeah.
The idea that you're alone in the universe.
Is that when you realized it was about Imagine?
Well, I was like, okay, that's a subliminal. You know what I mean? Like, maybe he had been listening to Imagine, and then he got on his guitar. But then, when he said the thing about the dreamer, because he's right like, there. You know, you say I'm a dreamer, but I'm not the only. Like, he says, I'm a dreamer too. And that's when I knew it was about Imagine, because it says, you'll say I'm a dreamer, but I'm not the only one. And he's saying, you say that you're a dreamer, well, I'm a dreamer too. You're right, you're not the only one. I have a dream too. And so, I just thought it was, you know, John Lennon was painting this utopian existence of godless secularism that is a complete fantasy and a fiction. We saw, and the nerve of John Lennon, we saw what a godless utopia looked like in the Soviet Union.
Right.
And it wasn't fun.
No.
And I'm not a capitalist. I have a lot of affinity for Marx, but it was not a fun existence. Go read Animal Farm. Go read Solzhenitsyn. It wasn't a fun existence.
Yeah.
So I just think that there's a lot of fundamentalist Christians that get triggered and can't do the hard work of thinking
Yeah.
stridently about criticisms of their worldview, and they immediately, you can see it with the mass stuff. Like, they just immediately shut down and can't think critically. Like, I just saw this idiot, Marcus Pittman, and he's like, he goes, because the Surgeon General is like, hey, if you want your schools and your churches and stuff to open quicker, how about we wear masks so that we can
eliminate this thing
so that
faster.
we can open quicker. And this fool gets on and he starts chuckling. He goes, and no disrespect, but this brother, if he caught COVID, he'd be in a lot of trouble. He's not the most healthy individual, if you can get my meaning. But he's like, I love it when the government tells me when and where I can worship and when I can pray and blah, blah, blah. The guy, I'm like, he wasn't saying when you could pray, you fucking imbecile. He was saying that how about we don't end up like Texas, who's got 50 cases of kids contracting COVID, and Kentucky, which today released they've got 1,000 babies, and then Kentucky just recently released they've got 1,000 cases of COVID. And you know what this fool said? He says, look man, if I'm not coughing and if I'm not short of breath, I'm going to go to church without my mask, blah blah blah. It's like, you idiot. So my point is, there's a lot of Christians that are just anti-intellectual, immediately get triggered, they're just stupid. And unfortunately, there are a lot of secularists that are the exact same way. They just get triggered immediately, and any criticism of their grounding presuppositions, like they can't countenance it, they can't deal with it.
Yeah.
So it's like,
it makes it hard to have a conversation because it's like, you're not even looking at the facts here. You're just like, they're dead set on a certain mindset, and they won't be swayed by facts.
Right.
It's so, oh my word, like that post that I put and the comments underneath it they were so frustrating to me because it was like, honest to goodness, the post that I made was inarguable.
100%. 100%.
And I thought through how I was going to write that too.
100%.
And then, of course, here come the Christians. Riding in to argue it.
Yeah.
It's like, wow.
Yeah. It's unbelievable. And then they put out...
And we're Christians.
And they put out all this false information. So somebody came and just gently and just refuted every single false, silly lie. And it had zero effect.
Those facts didn't pop up on their feed.
It had zero effect on them whatsoever. It's unbelievable. Unbelievable.
They want to believe a certain thing.
But so that's human nature. So that's one of the things that was very curious to me about the Imagine video, was that they were not interacting with any of the arguments that I was making. Mm-hmm. It was just, which of course is a little bit different, because I'm not going to say, like, there's an emotional component to that song, because...
Was that the one where you said you wanted to interview him?
Yeah, I was like, I'll interview the big homie. He's long dead, if you didn't know. But I think... look, there are some very challenging epistemic / moral / there's some really difficult issues with running a world with an empty heaven. Mm-hmm. And Nietzsche understood that, which was the whole famous thing about the madman in the square and killing God and things like that, where the guy is driven crazy and all this. Like, Nietzsche predicted a lot of death because of the death of God, and then we were going to evolve and become the Ubermensch and figure it out. So the old school atheists understood the implications of what they were saying and how that would result, what would take place in the world if millions of people adopted that understanding, and if governments adopted that understanding. But neo-atheists, the people that watch the Sam Harris YouTube video and now all of a sudden are arrogantly walking around, who know nothing about their own intellectual history, you tell them, we saw that. We saw that Soviet Union. They said that's communism. That has nothing to do with atheism. And then you explain to them, as Solzhenitsyn said, that atheism wasn't incidental to communism. It was the grounding principle of Soviet communism. Solzhenitsyn said that. The Guardian reported that. The Guardian was the most left-wing thing of all time. And of course, the atheists who were running around killing people. Yemelian Yurlovsky, who said that the reason that their brand of communism, because the Soviets did not invent communism, neither did Marx, but the reason that their brand of communism was successful was because it was, this is a direct quote from Yurlovsky, because it was permeated with the spirit of militant atheism. Those were literally his exact words. So I'm talking to these guys, I'm like, what are you talking about? Now, I'm not saying every atheist government would result in what we saw in the Soviet Union, but you can't say that the Soviet Union and all those atrocities was about that and had nothing to do with, you know, I was rewatching one of the firesides I had. Good old Ben Webb called up. He said, it had nothing to do. He said it had nothing to do with atheism. And so I said, okay, well, where's Yurlovsky? What did Yurlovsky say? Well, Yurlovsky was wrong. I was like, okay, look.
I can't do it. I can't have those conversations with people.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. At least Ben called up, you know. But
yeah, I know. But you're like perfect for those conversations because you will have the conversation with people. You'll continue to have the conversation with people, and you'll pretty much stay friends after.
Oh, I love Ben.
Yeah.
He knows I love him. You know, he's like it's again, this is a modern neo-atheism, right? Where they'll say that the term atheist has no implications. It has no other implications. It's just a statement about a lack of belief in God or gods, as if that has no implications. But again, that's how I know. Okay, this guy hasn't read Nietzsche. Like he hasn't read any Nietzsche, and these people don't believe that they should, because it's this hyper modernist sort of, hey, I've got the latest version of atheism, and this is the most. I don't need to look back at what other people were saying. What a silly thing this. Of course, every grounding worldview you have has implications in life and has ramifications to it.
Right.
So I think he really went after it here because what's interesting is religion is the opiate of the masses, yada yada yada. And, it's just a fairy story, yada, yada, yada. And he names the song Lullaby.
Yeah.
So he's flipping it onto them and saying, no, you believe in the fairy story. You believe that you can construct a society.
He said, I'm not going to sing your lullaby or something.
Yeah. He's like, you think you can construct a society without the God who made you and be successful and have all the wonders of the Western world. And I would commend to you, beautiful people, Tom Holland again, where Tom Holland is an atheist historian, but he said that Christianity single-handedly shaped the West and brought us the Renaissance, among other things. So, I mean, he says it more strongly than I do, and the guy's an atheist. I mean, subhanAllah, man, just jump on board. Get on the team. I saw a very interesting conversation between him and N.T. Wright.
What they say?
And they were just, so N.T. Wright is the Paul guy. So Tom Holland says that the cross is the singular event that shaped Western history. N.T. Wright basically believes that Paul basically shaped Western history. And it's funny because N.T. Wright is a Christian, Tom Holland is the atheist. Which of course you could harmonize that by simply saying, Paul said, I determined to speak nothing among you except for Christ and him crucified. Paul was the one that that crystallized all the theology around what happened on the cross.
Yes, he did.
So, Peter and those guys were definitely preaching a message, and that was their thing. They're like, oh, we're going to go preach. Paul would sit back, and he would think for years and years and years about what it meant that God, in the person of the Messiah, was crucified.
Yeah.
And so Paul came up with all of these, well, this implies this implies that, this implies, and then the bodily resurrection. And they were talking about how, you had slavery there. It was a pretty disgusting way to put it, and I'm not even gonna talk about the way that Tom Holland put it when he was talking about slavery in the Second Temple period, where he was basically saying, look, your entire body and was basically the property of your, you know, of your master to do with as he pleased with his sexual urges. And so, in the resurrection, the Christian argument that Jesus physically, bodily rose from the dead, not that his spirit will live on or any, but like the insistence that we touched his body, because you had all these different isms and Gnosticism and things like that were kind of like esoteric and things like that. And then on the Greek side, you had a lot of people that believed that, you know, physicality in the physical world was basically a trap, a prison, and that you wanted to ascend to the spiritual world and, you know, whatever. And then you had that on the Kabbalistic side with Judaism. None of them were expecting a physical bodily resurrection.
Right.
The Jews weren't expecting one, and neither were the Greeks. So that's why when Jesus said, you know, I'm going to raise your brother from the dead, she's like, yeah, at the last day. None of them had this idea of a physical bodily resurrection. That was something very, very new, completely unexpected. And so then you hear Paul saying, you were bought with a price, and then Paul says, glorify God with your body. Then he says, I adjure you, present your bodies as a living sacrifice, holy and pleasing to him. And then in 1 Corinthians 7, he says, don't become slaves of men because you're the slaves of God, yada, yada, yada. And so the point that Tom Holland was saying was that this sanctified the body of a person.
Yeah.
In a way, there is no other... To connect your death and your resurrection with Jesus' death and Jesus' resurrection made your body a holy thing. And so he's like, where did you think we got the idea of bodily autonomy and all this thing from? We didn't get it from the Greeks. Because Aristotle was saying that those barbarians were particularly suited to be slaves of the upper class and all that, you know. And so he's like, where did that come from?
Yeah.
And the atheist dude was like, well, I mean, come on, that's axiomatic. And he goes, no, it wasn't. No, it wasn't axiomatic. What are you talking about? So it was just a very fascinating conversation to watch this. And then, of course, the guy was talking about what Jesus says, don't look at a woman with lust in your heart. Compare that to, hey, if you've got a slave, you can do whatever you want with her. Jesus is putting the bar so high that touching her in an illegitimate way was completely insane. Because Holland was saying, okay, and again, Holland is an atheist. He goes, if you were a slave owner in the Second Temple period and you started following Jesus, how would you be able to reconcile that? So he basically said Jesus didn't come out and speak against the slavery of the day because he wasn't trying to get in conflict with the Romans. He was trying to get crucified by the Jews. Very interesting. But he said, if you look at the Sermon on the Mount and you were a slaveholder, there's no way that you could justify keeping the slave, and you definitely wouldn't be able to justify raping the slave. He goes, Tom Holland was like, where do you think the Me Too thing came from? What do you think the basis of the idea that a woman's body is sacred and that she has her own body and she should be able to do with it what she will, and not have somebody come and mount her like a beast? He's like, where do you think that came from? That didn't come from. It was mind-boggling stuff.
Well, how long ago did you watch that?
I don't know, a couple weeks ago. Why?
Oh, I thought it was going to be like years ago.
Why?
It's just because you always have this information that stays so fresh in your head. So I thought you were going to be like probably 10 years ago.
Well, that stuff is that stuff is. I mean, that's not something that leaves your head, because when you hear an atheist guy saying that, it's unbelievable.
Yeah.
So I just think the real thrust of the song is to challenge people's suppositions. You really, really have to. And, when you're trying to build a government, I say this all the time, like the Declaration of Independence or the preamble to the Declaration of Independence was a theological argument for the colonists to get out from under the rule of King George, because they said we hold these truths to be self-evident. This is axiomatic. What is axiomatic? That all men are created equal and endowed with certain unalienable rights given to them by their creator. So the founding fathers did not base their argument for independence in secularism. They didn't say, look guys, there's no God, and so God isn't pertinent to anything, but we don't want to deal with your BS anymore, so we're going to go do our own thing over here. That's not what they did. Now, I'm not saying that they were card-carrying Christians, but it's complete historical revisionism to try to pretend that these people were secularists like you. They weren't. They weren't Christians like me, but they weren't secularists like you. And I just think there's a lot of atheists who are thinking, very hard thinking people who wrestle with this stuff, and great, fine. But the modern pop neo-atheists, I don't really see much difference between them and Christian fundamentalists as far as how they interact with ideas that challenge the superstructure of their mindset. I don't really see a lot of difference. It's just interesting stuff. Okay, I'm gonna give this song a 10.
Whoa.
just stick it in the eye.
Oh my gosh.
We're gonna put John Lennon in the
thumbnail.
In the thumbnail. It's gonna be epic.
Oh, you're so terrible. Okay.
I'm
gonna go with a 9. 8.9. 8.9.
8.9.
I do like the part where it got heavy.
There you go. Vin out.
Sorry out.
Gone.
What are we all living for? If nothing's worth dying for tonight, your dreams are not enough. What I need is love that's worth laying